Hi, everyone. This is Dee, your favorite self-love and mindset coach. Welcome back to another episode of Eternal Evolution of Self. I have another wonderful guest with me today. This is Johnny. Hi, Johnny. Welcome to the podcast, and thank you for being my guest today.
Hi, Dee. Thank you. I appreciate being here.
You're very welcome. Tell us what you do in this life.
Well, I do a bunch of things. My passion in life, as I hit my third trimester in life, I decided I wanted to make it my best trimester.
Love
And
that.
my first two trimesters were great. And for those of you who are hearing me for the first time, I speak. My voice sounds a little different. This is not a fashion statement. I had cancer about a couple decades ago, and it kind of wreaked havoc all the radiation. And so I have a trait. So I'm a two-time cancer survivor. So that happened in my second trimester. But I've had a really storied, beautiful life. I've been married 35 years to a beautiful woman that is, I married way above my pay grade.
Oh, I doubt that.
So, if you met her, you know that I'm speaking the truth. And so but anyways, I got to my third trimester, and I've been very successful as a videographer. I own and operate a video production company, and it's been highly successful. And we just work on referrals. We don't advertise, and it's been around for a long time. But over time, there's this as I got a little bit older, I thought, is that all there is? Is there, can I do more? I felt this pull to give back. And I sat down with my wife when I was 62. I just turned 65. And I said, I might retire one year. And when I do, how do you feel about me hanging around the house an extra 50, 60 hours a week? And she was like, you should get a hobby. And I was like, I think I want to be a therapist. She was like, what? She says there's two problems with that. Number one, you need a master's degree. Number two, in order to get a master's degree, you need a bachelor's degree. I had neither. However, just yesterday in the mail, I wish I had it for a prop, but I got my diploma from Florida State University because I went back to school after that conversation and took one course each semester. And I graduated in August of this year, just last month or
Oh,
2 months ago.
congratulations.
So I wrapped that up. But in the process of that, um, a friend of mine who's a coach said, Johnny, you're nuts. Don't, you should, why be a therapist when you could be a life coach? And I went, tell me more.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this sounds pretty good. I think so. I started to look into that. So I plan on retiring, semi-retiring when I'm 70. And I thought, if I was a become a therapist, it was going to take me like 6 years.
Hmm.
And I thought, and about $70,000.
Right.
But when I jumped into the life coaching certification process, which was quite intense, as you know,
Yeah.
uh, I loved it, and I felt like I was thriving, not just surviving. I mean, every coaching session that I had with somebody, I felt more alive. It filled up my cup to overflowing, so I could then give from abundance. And I knew that it was kind of like when something clicks in your mind and you hear that,
Yeah.
like, this is it. I had that feeling like, oh, this is what it's all about.
Yeah.
So I shifted, and then I loved it so much, but I had this prosperous six-figure business that I run, a video production company. I thought, how do I manage both?
Yeah.
I want to do this now. I thought I'd do it in 6 years. So little by little, I've been very selective in my video process and company, and kind of pulling that back a little bit and doing what really lights me up there, and referring the business that didn't quite fill me up, the stuff that was more draining. And I shifted my passion into life coaching because I feel like I can make a difference here.
Yes.
The world was upside down a few years ago, and there's still a lot of people that are upside down from the pandemic. It changed everything for a lot of people, and so there was a huge calling for it, a need for it, and for me, I slid into that like I was always there.
Yeah.
Um, it was just a perfect fit for me. So that's what I do is I mostly work with women that are 35, 40 and older. I mean, some a little bit younger, but for the most part, and I do work with a few men as well, but for the most part, I work with women who are in a transition that are struggling somehow, where they're either struggling with their coworkers or their boss or their partner, perhaps their kids, and to help them overcome that overwhelming feeling that they're either not good enough, they're never going to be good enough. Um, they they've lost their feeling of purpose and kind of. So this is the I'm a relationship coach, I'm an empowerment coach, a health coach, a mental fitness positive intelligence coach, but I merge all of those things together with each client and try to find what tools are going to be the best for them. And when you can make that happen in a coaching session where you can, it's like watching the sunrise over the Grand Canyon or over the ocean in the morning. When you can see that expression on their face go from stressed to empowered,
Right.
there's nothing like it. There's just nothing like it.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's absolutely nothing like it. And I have a very vivid imagination. So as you're throwing out those descriptive terms, I'm literally seeing that in my mind, and it's so beautiful.
Mm,
And it really is because one of the things that we have so prevalent in our society is that we don't do what lights us up, which was a phrase you used earlier, and we don't feel like we're worthy. And
mhm.
it's that is the pandemic. That is really the true pandemic in our not just our country but our world right now, is that we don't have that sense of worthiness, and that's what holds so many of us back, isn't it? And I'm sure it's even been a
Yeah.
factor in your own life. I know it has been in mine for sure. So
Hmm.
what
Yeah.
kind of what kind of advice would you give someone who's in that place where they don't even maybe know what lights them up anymore, but they certainly don't feel worthy of it?
Yeah. Well, to answer that question directly, there's several steps, but the very, very, very first step is empathy for yourself,
Mm,
unconditional love for yourself. I like to do a visualization with some of my clients that are lacking in this area. And I have this, well, imagine if you have a child's picture in your mind of yourself, like yourself when you were 4 years old, right? And that child, the beautiful essence is there, right? They were born with this preciousness, and the world hasn't done anything to them, hopefully, drastically at this point. And that essence is just shining through in the photo of yourself. So if you can really imagine that, and then imagine for the last 20, 30 years, there's been somebody in your head recording all of the negative self-talk that's been going on, and they've literally written it all down. and they printed out this huge printout of all of these cruel things that you told yourself. I'm not good enough. I've never been good enough. I'm too fat. I'm too skinny. I'm too tall. I'm too short. You, all of these things. And it's all on paper now. And somebody picks up that paper. And if you could imagine just for a minute, somebody walks up to that beautiful 4-year-old child and starts telling them all those things,
Mm.
what are you called to do right there? When you see it happen, what's your first thought?
Oh my gosh, I want to protect the child, you know?
And you push away. And what do you tell the person
Hush.
that is saying this?
I tell them to
Yeah,
hush. Yeah,
it's right. But so the first thing is you push that person away, and then you turn your attention to the child, and you go and you love them unconditionally, and you tell them it's all a lie. Everything that person said is a lie,
yeah.
and you love that person unconditionally. Wow, that 4-year-old girl is still inside of you today.
Hmm.
So just something that I love to do in sessions is have them keep that picture of that 4-year-old self in their environment. So the next time that they say that negative self-talk that they have for themselves, they look at that child and they push that person away. They push that thought away, that voice in their head, they push it away. And they embrace themselves and love themselves unconditionally. And when you can do that first and fill up your own cup and know that you are good enough right now in your own skin without any improvement, you're priceless. You're perfect.
Yeah,
Can you be better? Sure. Can you change? Sure. But you are enough right now.
right now.
And when
Yes.
you can grasp that, then you can then share that gift of empathy with others when you are filled up yourself.
Yes.
So that's where I would start with somebody with the situation that you just mentioned.
That is an amazing visualization. I mean, I've heard of different visualizations regarding inner child work before, but that is
Hmm.
so powerful. And then suggesting that they keep the picture present so that it's a visual reminder of this is still you. I mean, it's that child is a part of you. So learning to love
Yes.
that piece of you and realize that that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. That is gorgeous. I love it.
Yeah.
Man.
And that was part of my positive intelligence training. And there's a whole slew of those kind of things that I would like to try to integrate into that person's life that's working with me. And so you can become to rely on those anchors,
Yeah.
of ways to remind you that I am I am good. I am good enough. And if other people don't see that, it's their loss, not mine.
Right.
But it takes a minute to get that. You don't just flip a switch and be able to do this. I mean, sure, that the visualization is powerful, but there is a half-life with coaching
Mhm.
that unless we have constant reminders, with anchoring things into our environment to remind us of what's important and why, then we tend to get sucked into other people's negative energy.
Mhm.
And that's another topic that I love to talk about as well.
Yeah. And it's so easy to do that. And it is kind of a vicious cycle that we have to be constantly diligent, exist, and just, I mean, like, I've gotten to the place in my life where I'm so sensitive to the negative energy that it's like, I don't even, my threshold for it some days is almost nothing. It's like, no, I can't today. Like, I gotta just stay away from all of it. But so what advice would you have for people who are looking to decrease the amount of negativity in their life or the impact that it has on them?
Okay. A lot of things. Something that I think I might have mentioned that earlier is I have inattentive ADHD, So my mind is like all over the place on so many different ways, and I've had so many different certifications and trainings that I don't necessarily stay on one road or one track. I like to pull things in from all sides. But something that I've learned is when we communicate on two levels, on two tracks. And research shows that what we say is about 15% of communication, and that's it.
Right.
The rest of it is what we don't say and how we say what we do say. The tone, the attitude, the energy that's wrapped around it. I used to sing at Walt Disney World, one of the Kids of the Kingdom, and I did a show once with the Seven Dwarfs. There was a time in the show that they would walk up to the microphone and do something that was representative of their character. Grumpy would walk up to the microphone and go, and you could see the people in the audience go, "Hmm."
Yeah.
And then, but then Sleepy would walk up and go, "Ah," and half of the audience would yawn.
Yeah.
And then then a minute later, half the entertainers would be yawning. So that's called mirror neurons. Mirror neurons is a thing. It's in our brain. We can't escape it as a fact. I mean, it is there. Now we can control it if we know about it, but a lot of people don't even think about this stuff. So when people walk into a room and they whisper to you, there's a good chance that you'll whisper back. You have no idea why you're whispering, but you just do it. If they're laughing and happy, a smile forms on your face without you trying it.
Mhm.
On the other hand, if somebody walks into the room with negative energy and you just feel it and
Mhm.
it repulses you. So when you walk into a conversation carrying this negative energy, or the other person is carrying it, there's something called a negative contagion or a negative vortex that can happen. It's like feedback where if I come in all mean and angry, you'll feel that, especially if you're an empath.
Mhm.
And so you absorb that energy and you do one of two things or three, the fight, flight, or freeze thing, reflex comes in. But most people take that negative energy and mirror it right back to the person. So the person that was upset to begin with upsets you. Then you and your energy comes back at that person and upsets them more. So on stage, on a microphone, when you have feedback, you talk into the microphone, the sound comes out of the speaker. But when it goes back into the microphone, it's a reverb effect and it gives you that loud sound
Mhm.
that, feedbacks the microphone. And the same thing with emotions happen with two people in a conversation. And if it's positive energy, you can pull up somebody. And if it's negative energy, it's the other. So just knowing that that's a thing and that people, so going back to the baby picture, um, I'm I told you I have ADHD. My wife and I wanted to do a meditation. I love meditations,
I do too.
but my voice is not conducive right now to record a meditation. But my wife is a voiceover artist. So I said, Tina, I want you to read this for me. She said, I'll tell you what, why don't you set it up and I'll read it. It's about 7 minutes long. But what it really is, we're born with this beautiful essence, but then all through life, people are throwing mud at us and
Mm.
they're pushing us and they're bruising us emotionally, hopefully. It's just
Right.
not even hopefully, but I mean, hopefully it's not physical. But anyways, life just throws stuff at us and it covers up our beautiful essence. So sometimes when people are really nasty, it's this outside stuff that is surrounding them that's the nastiness. The inside person almost always has that beautiful priceless essence that's
Hmm.
just been marred and covered up. So we made this to let people that have been kind of emotionally abused by living with a narcissist or whatever, whoever in life has been covering up their light,
Hmm.
to give it away. It's just something free on my website. So she wrote it. I mean, she read what I wrote, and I got to introduce it. And do not judge me here. But why am I talking about this? There was a reason. There was a reason you asked me a question. What was the question that you asked that this pertained to?
We were talking about negativity and how people cannot allow it to affect them so
Oh, right.
much.
Yes. So when somebody comes at me, thank you,
You're welcome.
the mind of somebody with unattainable ADHD, if you never encountered people like that, I'm sure you have. But anyways, when people come at me with negative energy now, because I know mirror neurons are in effect, I do not want to become emotionally hijacked with other people's problems. So I'll do something called preempting the saboteurs, especially with certain people, because I don't want them to trigger me and try to deter my joy
Right.
and my low stress life. Um, so I'll try to preempt their saboteurs or their saboteur behavior. And if I know it's coming, I can almost play a game with myself. I wonder how long it will be before they bring up the X, Y, and Z to try to push my buttons. And when they do, instead of getting upset, I smile to myself and say, ah, here it comes. And I know it's their saboteurs talking because I know this person is a beautiful person. But I know life has been hard for
Right.
them. So instead of reflecting that negative energy back, because I'm actually smiling to myself, I don't express this to them. But I go, ah, here comes their negativity, that poor person. It must really suck to be them. I mean, it's hard to be around them for the 30 seconds that I'm interacting with them, but man, how hard it must be. So I can have empathy for this person,
Yeah.
even though that I'm not crazy about the way they behave. But I have to think, why did they behave this way? How did they get this way?
Hmm.
Because they started out just like I started out, but somehow life has been hard for them. And so if you can have that moment where you can step back and not get sucked in and be hijacked by somebody else's negative energy, and you can hold on to your positivity, you might not turn them around 100%. But if they come into the conversation at a minus 10 as far as negative energy, and you come into the conversation with a plus 10, I might drop down to maybe plus 5 because you do have a reservoir of positive energy that can be consumed.
Hmm.
So you have to constantly refresh it. But I might be able to pull them up from a minus 10 to a plus 2,
Right.
you know? They might put me down a little, but I've built up a resistance from doing mental fitness exercise. I try to do these things it's like 2 minutes every 3 hours, where I kind of just step back and I really ground myself. I take some deep breaths and I get in touch with my five senses and I'm just present. I'm either exploring things, I'm innovating, I'm being creative, I'm listening to the sound of my breath, I'm listening to the birds. And it's like defragmenting a hard drive. And I do that every 3 hours or so, just like we need to eat every 3, 4, 5 hours.
Yeah.
It's not a one and done. Mindfulness, if you just do it in the morning for an hour, well, that's great. And it'll last you until maybe 90 minutes. But that tank of mindfulness evaporates. So you have to replenish, especially if you're around people that want to pull you down. And so, I don't know how much time we have, but the next topic might be how to have healthy boundaries about, keeping your core beliefs sacred.
Yeah. I think that's a huge, huge thing, healthy boundaries. So, how might someone implement healthy boundaries if maybe they don't even know what healthy boundaries are? So, how would someone at the very beginning of this journey figure this out? What can they do?
Well, as a habit change life coach, we know that it all starts with understanding what you want, why you want it, or who do you want to become?
Right.
You know, who are you? And a lot of times, the people that I start to work with, they were a mom, and now their kids are in college. They were a stay-at-home mom, and now what? Um, and their identity, they're having a huge identity shift. What do you want? Why do you want it? Who do I want to be? So that understanding that sometimes takes a couple sessions. But once you really lock that in, then I kind of in rom-coms or movies, love stories. At the end of the movie where you've had these two characters that have somehow just kind of been missing each other, but at the end of the movie they finally come together and they kiss, they run towards each other, they run towards their future, as opposed to running away from your past.
Right.
It's so much easier to run towards something you want versus trying to escape something else.
Right.
I mean, sometimes you do just need to escape. Some of the people that I work with are in relationships that they just have to get out of.
Yeah. I was there.
But also, that's a whole conversation we could have on another time.
Yes.
Uh, but it's difficult to stay focused when you're just running away from something. But when you really know what you want, why you want it, then you can protect it. One of the things that I have problems with is I'm a pleaser. As far as one of my traits that it was a God-given gift. I love to be in service. I was an altar boy when I was little. I was a scout leader. I just like to help people.
Mhm.
And one of my people that I really respect is Mother Teresa.
Mhm.
She's like the epitome of wanting to help people
Yes.
just for the sheer joy of helping. However, I'm also an achiever. I like to achieve things. But you put those two things together, if you become a hyperachiever or a workaholic,
Right.
and you overplease and you please so much that you're saying yes to everybody else, but you're not saying yes to what's most important. And for me, my most important is not just myself, but my wife. So
Mhm.
when I say no to somebody else, I can feel good about that because I know that what I want to say yes to is over here.
Yes.
But if I don't know what I want and why I want it, then I might say yes to everything.
Right.
And when you say yes to everybody, you're saying no to yourself. You're avoiding something.
Absolutely.
What and you're avoiding the clarity of what you really want. So that's the that's what the underlying things that we work with when I work on people with people with healthy boundaries. And the difference between a healthy boundary and an unhealthy boundary. Sometimes we need to self-soothe. In other words, we need to relax. So that's good. You want to be able to de-stress. But if you do that with drinking a six pack or a half a bottle of tequila, that's unhealthy, obviously. I mean, it will give you that short-term relief that you might be looking for to cope with things, but on the long run, it's not sustainable and it's unhealthy. So
Right.
having a boundary to self-soothe, like I'm in the situation, I'm gonna push away and I'm gonna relax. How you do that and why you do that is important. And that's the
Right.
difference between healthy and unhealthy. You have to really think about these things and not just a knee-jerk reaction. It's good to have a logical plan in place.
Right. Yeah, that's
So,
absolutely. And I put up my own healthy boundary around drinking. First of all, I have a very sensitive body. My body
mhm.
requires very small amounts of anything to become affected by it. So I'm a
Mm.
cheap drunk, as they say, anyway. But if I put up a boundary around drinking, where if I am in any way upset, frustrated, sad, I purposely will not drink at all. I won't drink anything. I won't even have a glass of wine because I don't want it to become a crutch for me. I don't want to be like, oh, I had this stressful day. I need this glass of wine. I will shy away from the glass of wine if I've had a stressful day because I've made that's my own personal journey. I'm not trying to
hmm
tell everyone that's what you need to do. This is just my personal journey because I didn't
Sure.
want it to become a crutch. So
Right.
I always say
And yeah,
if you ever
I
see me
respect
with
that.
a glass of wine in my hand, I'm a happy girl. know, I'm very, very much in a good mental state at that point. So,
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned a glass of wine because when I was little, my mom had, it was, I don't know, I might have been 8 when I saw this bottle of wine. I thought, I wonder what that tastes like. And man, was it terrible. It was Morgan and David grape wine. And so anyways, I talked to my mom about it a little bit later in life. She says, "Well, we had 5 kids. We ran our own business. My dad had 3 different businesses."
wow.
And she said, I had a glass of wine every day at 5 o'clock, just one. And she says, don't fault me, don't judge me. I said, I'm
Right.
not judging you. But for her, that was her stepping back and taking that minute. She didn't
Sure.
care what the heck was going on, and we were wild kids. I mean, they would ring the dinner bell at like 6 o'clock.
Hmm.
We lived on Cape Cod, Massachusetts at the time, and they didn't. That, this was a while ago where you didn't have to really watch your kids every minute, and they didn't know where we were all day long. They didn't care. They just wanted to make sure that we were home at 6 o'clock. And when she was making dinner, she would have that glass of wine, and it was her time. And she didn't care what was going on.
Right.
And she needed that. She's 91, or turning 91 next month. My mom and dad have been married 71 years as of this
Amazing.
week.
Oh, congratulations
And
to them.
they're still independent. My dad's 95, taking care of her. She has early onset Alzheimer's. She fell and hit her head, and the next day she woke up and couldn't do certain things. And but it's been controlled with medication. Basically, it's progressed a little bit, but things that happen when we get older. Some things are inevitable. That it's going to be a little bit more challenging. So my dad is now the primary caregiver in the household, and they're still independent. It's amazing. They're really good examples.
Yeah, that's great. That's amazing. Well, but see, she kept that healthy boundary around that one glass of wine because, first of all, she had one glass of wine, and it
hmm
was her self-care time where she would go inward and reflect, I'm sure, and appreciate the things that were good in her life and those moments and things like that. So, absolutely,
hmm
nothing wrong with having a glass of wine. And we all do things different ways, and we all have to figure out what's good for us. That's the beauty of personal development, right?
Yeah, it is personal. And with being a relationship coach, when people get married, they come into the marriage with expectations,
Yes.
and they're hardly ever the same. Some people want to have a lot of kids. Some people want to have no kids. Some people think that a relationship is all encompassing, where um, you, for instance, if you have friends of the opposite sex and you're married, that needs to end. And other people think that's okay. Well, is it? It depends which lens you're looking at it, right?
Right.
And trying to figure out what is important for the couple, what's important for you. I had one client that came to me. Her husband decided she wanted to have an open relationship. He wanted to have relationships with other women. And she was like, no,
Right.
that's a hard no. For her, that was an easy boundary to say, this is not going to happen.
Hmm.
Um, and I won't tell you any more about that story. But anyways, so we all have expectations of what should be, what could be, but what is. So how you deal with what is where we need to really spend a lot of time and try to figure out what do we want, why we want it, and then how to
Right.
protect and keep safe. For me, oh, I was talking about how I'm a pleaser and overachiever. For me, time is sacred to me,
Mhm.
and I at one point gave away my time to everybody and anybody. And as I realized that where I spend my time is who I am as a person.
Right.
What I read, who I speak with, and what I dream about. My time is who I am. It's a tool to become who I want to become.
Absolutely.
And so I try to have a boundary around my time. So if it's some people, it can be in relationships, but it's usually it's different for everybody. It's not as usual what you're looking to have a boundary for. A lot of people try to protect their schedule at work or their scope of work. People try to say, "Hey, can you also do this?" Well, you have to be prepared for people to want to use you. Use your time. And if you're up for that, fine. But if you really don't want to, being able to say no to that, you better be darn sure what you want to say yes to, because if you don't, you're going to say yes to and start building resentment. And resentment turns to apathy, and pretty soon you're pushing people away because you're just fed up.
Right.
So,
Absolutely. And you get resentful. So I think saying that you need to be sure what you want to say yes to is a really powerful statement. I think that's a great place to begin when you're looking at building healthy boundaries around whatever it is. Because I mean, ask yourself, do I really want to say yes to that? Is that something I want to spend my time doing? Or would my time be spent better doing something else? You said your time is sacred to you, and there are periods of time in my day that are more sacred to me than others. For instance, I prefer to get my day done early. I like to get up and do things early in the day, and then I like to have my evenings free to do whatever I want, especially spend time with Steve, because Steve is the first healthy relationship I've ever been in my entire life. So the time that we're winding down before bed and things like that after and having dinner together, and we cook a lot together. So those times are times where I want that time to be uninterrupted. So I don't, I will say no to things during those times because that is something that I want to say yes to. I want to say yes to spending that time uninterrupted with him. So it's a beautiful thing to me. And I don't want to share that with anybody. I mean, not that we don't, occasionally get together with friends during the evening or whatever, and that's fine. It's a choice we make together, but I don't, I'm not going to have that time interrupted on a consistent basis. It's just not something I'm willing to tolerate. So I think that's really important. Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah. So I appreciate your insights today, Johnny, and the beautiful ways that you've brought things forward, and I haven't heard some of these ways before. So and that's one of the things I love about this podcast is I'm talking to many different people and learning things and growing myself too in these conversations. So thank you so much for bringing forward these ideas today in the ways that you've brought them forward and the descriptive terms that you've used, because being a writer and a poet, I love descriptive terms like that. So I really appreciate you using those. Um, Tell people where they can find you if they would love to have you as their coach.
All right. Well, my website is probably the easiest place to get more information. And I live about a mile from the ocean. So the name of my company is Beachside Life and Health. Excuse me. I, I should know my own company. Beachside Health and Life Coaching. Beachside Health and Life Coaching.net. And it's all spelled out. There's no ampersand. And it's .net, not .com. I own
.net.
the .com, but I haven't gotten around to linking it up.
That's
I
all
mean,
right.
a coach, there's so many things that we have to do, wear so many hats. But anyways, beachside health and life coaching.net is probably what they can find me.
Okay, perfect. And can they reach you also on social media?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, if they look up that, that's also my Facebook page, and I do have an Instagram account under that same title, I believe, beside health and life coaching. So, yeah, and of course my name. I do a lot of messaging on Facebook with people. When it's business related, I usually use my business page for that. And for my friends, which are around 1,000 Facebook friends, we do a lot of messaging there as well. So, but I'm also on LinkedIn. Some people reach out to me there. I try to be in as many places where people are hanging out as possible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I will link those down in the description box below this video. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. I know you've enjoyed this conversation as much as I've enjoyed having it. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share so that we can get this message out to everyone who needs to hear it today. Thank you so much again, Johnny, for being here. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And I love you all, and we'll see you next time.